Taylor's, South Carolina, a town known for its friendly faces and gentle southern charm, a place where life moved at a slower pace, where neighbors knew each other by name and children played freely in the streets. It was a place where people felt safe, secure, and far removed from the darkness that lurked in the shadows of the world. But on April 27, 2001, that sense of peace was shattered, ripped apart by an act of unimaginable violence that would forever stain the fabric of this quiet community. The events of that day would expose the dark underbelly of human obsession, the terrifying consequences of unchecked rage, and the fragility of life itself. This is the story of Brad Sigmon, a young man consumed by a dangerous infatuation and the horrifying crime that would leave a family shattered and a community forever scarred. As the sun began its final descent, casting long shadows across the manicured lawns of Taylor's, an eerie sense of foreboding settled over the town. The air grew heavy with unspoken dread, a harbinger of the unspeakable horrors that were about to unfold. Unbeknownst to the unsuspecting residents, evil had infiltrated their midst, wearing the face of a seemingly ordinary young man. Brad Sigmon was about to unleash a torrent of violence that would forever shatter the tranquility of their peaceful town. Brad Sigmon was no stranger to Greenville County. He had grown up in the area, his life intertwined with the people and places that would later become the backdrop of his horrific crime. But somewhere along the way, Sigmon's path veered sharply off course, his heart becoming consumed by a dangerous obsession that would ultimately lead him down a path of destruction. At the center of Sigmon's twisted affections was Rebecca Barber, a young woman who had once captured his heart, but had since moved on with her life. Sigmon, however, refused to let go. He clung to the memory of their relationship, his thoughts becoming consumed by her. What began as a broken heart quickly morphed into something far more sinister, an unhealthy fixation that blurred the lines between love and possession. Sigmon's obsession with Rebecca became all-consuming, his every waking moment dominated by thoughts of winning her back, even if it meant resorting to extreme measures. He began to stalk her, his presence a constant, unwelcome shadow in her life. He called her incessantly, his voice a mixture of desperation and veiled threats. Rebecca, terrified by Sigmon's escalating behavior, tried to distance herself, but he was relentless. His obsession had twisted into a dangerous delusion, and he was determined to have her back, no matter the cost. As the days turned into weeks, Sigmon's behavior became increasingly erratic. He drank heavily, his judgment clouded by a toxic mix of alcohol, rage, and despair. He began to talk about getting even with Rebecca for rejecting him, his words laced with a chilling undercurrent of violence. The night before the murders, Sigmon's descent into darkness reached a fever pitch. He had spent the day brooding, his thoughts a swirling vortex of anger, jealousy, and resentment. As the sun began to set, he made his way to a local bar, seeking solace at the bottom of a bottle. It was there that he encountered Eugene Strube, a man with a troubled past of his own. Over the course of the evening, fueled by alcohol and cocaine, Sigmon shared his twisted fantasies with Strube. He spoke of his hatred for Rebecca's parents, blaming them for interfering in his relationship. Strube, initially dismissive, began to feel a growing sense of unease. There was a darkness in Sigmon's eyes, a chilling intensity that hinted at something far more sinister. Emboldened by alcohol and fueled by his all-consuming rage, Sigmon shared his twisted plan with Strube. He intended to tie up Rebecca's parents, using them as leverage to draw her back into his life. He envisioned a scenario where he would hold them hostage, forcing Rebecca to choose between her family and him. In his drug-addled mind, this was the only way to win her back, to reclaim what he believed was rightfully his. Strube, initially a passive participant in Sigmon's drunken ramblings, started to feel a chill run down his spine. The more Sigmon spoke, the more apparent it became that this was not just idle talk. This was a plan, meticulously crafted in the depths of a deranged mind. The casual mention of tying up the larks was particularly unsettling, its implication sending a wave of nausea through Strub's stomach. As the gravity of Sigmund's intentions sunk in, Strub felt a surge of fear. He realized that he had stumbled into something dark and dangerous, something that could have dire consequences. He tried to reason with Sigmund, to talk him down from the ledge of insanity, but his words fell on deaf ears. Sigmund was too far gone, his mind consumed by his obsession with Rebecca and his desire for revenge. Sensing that he could no longer be a part of this twisted scheme, Strub made his excuses and quickly distanced himself from Sigmund. He wanted no part in whatever horrors Sigmund had planned for that night. What happened next would forever be etched in the annals of Greenville County's history as a night of unimaginable horror. Fueled by a toxic cocktail of cocaine and rage, Brad Sigmon set out to execute his twisted plan. He drove to the Lark residence, his heart pounding with a mixture of anticipation and dread. As he approached their house, a wave of darkness washed over him, his mind consumed by the gruesome task at hand. He entered the house undetected, his movements fueled by a cold, calculating determination. William and Gladys Lark, a kind and loving couple, were completely unaware of the danger that lurked just outside their bedroom door. The details of what transpired next are too gruesome to recount in full. Suffice it to say that Sigmund unleashed a torrent of violence upon the unsuspecting couple, his rage manifesting in a brutal and sustained attack. William and Gladys Lark, their lives brutally cut short, became victims of a senseless act of violence, their only crime being the loving parents of the woman Sigmund craved. The brutality of the murders sent shockwaves through the community. Neighbors, friends, and family members struggled to comprehend how such a heinous act could occur in their midst. The Lark home, once a beacon of warmth and laughter, was now a chilling crime scene, forever stained by the darkness that had invaded its walls.
The United States witnessed a rare event on March 8, 2025. Brad Sigmon, a 67-year-old man, was executed by firing squad in South Carolina. This marked the first use of this method in the state's modern history. It was the first such execution in the U.S. since 2010. The use of the firing squad is a stark reminder of the death penalty's brutal reality. It also highlights the ongoing debate about its place in a modern society. The firing squad, while considered by some to be a more humane method than lethal injection, is undeniably violent. It evokes images of a bygone era, a time when justice was often swift and merciless. Sigmund's case brought the firing squad back into the national spotlight, igniting controversy and prompting reflection. His decision to choose this method, driven by his belief that it would be quicker and less painful than lethal injection, further fueled the debate. The firing squad, once relegated to the history books, was now at the forefront of the conversation about capital punishment in America. Brad Sigmon was convicted in 2002 for the brutal murders of his ex-girlfriend's parents. William and Gladys Lark were found bludgeoned to death in their home in 2001. Sigmon, after a period of hiding from law enforcement, was apprehended and charged with the crime. His trial, a highly publicized affair, captivated the state of South Carolina. The jury, after hearing the gruesome details of the murders, found Sigmon guilty. He was sentenced to death. Sigmon spent the next 23 years on death row, his appeals slowly winding their way through the legal system. As his execution date approached, Sigmon was given a choice: death by lethal injection or death by firing squad. South Carolina, grappling with drug shortages that had made lethal injections difficult to carry out, had recently introduced the firing squad as an alternative. Sigmon, fearing the prolonged suffering he believed was associated with lethal injection, opted for the firing squad. The execution took place at the South Carolina Department of Corrections execution chamber in Columbia. Sigmon, dressed in a plain jumpsuit, was strapped into a chair. A hood was placed over his head, and a target was pinned over his heart. 3 executioners, volunteer correctional officers whose identities remained anonymous, stood ready 15 feet away. Without warning, the shots rang out. Sigmund's body jerked with the impact. A small bloodstain appeared on his chest. It was over, in an instant. He was pronounced dead a few minutes later. Witnesses to the execution, including journalists and law enforcement officials, described a scene that was both clinical and unsettling. The firing squad, while efficient, was a stark reminder of the state's power to take a life. The image of Sigmon, strapped to a chair with a target on his chest, sparked outrage among death penalty opponents and left even some supporters questioning the method's humanity. Section 4. Echoes of the Past, Challenges of the Present. The use of the firing squad in Sigmon's case wasn't just a South Carolina story. It rekindled a national debate about capital punishment and its methods. The firing squad, associated with the Civil War era, seemed like a relic of a brutal past. Its resurgence raised questions about America's approach to justice. Lethal injection, introduced in the 70s, faces increasing scrutiny. Botched executions and legal challenges have plagued its use. Sigmon's case landed before the Supreme Court. The justices debated if states were violating the Eighth Amendment. The court's rulings have far-reaching implications for the death penalty in America. Section 5. The Death Penalty Debate. A question of morality. The execution of Brad Sigmon by firing squad highlighted deep divisions over capital punishment. The death penalty has long been a subject of intense debate. Supporters argue it serves as just punishment and deters crime. They believe it brings closure to victims' families. Opponents argue it is cruel and risks executing the innocent. They point to racial disparities and its failure to deter crime. Sigmon's case brought these arguments into focus. His final words called for Christians to help end the death penalty. The firing squad execution reignited a conversation about justice and morality.